Another reason for having importance of leadership buy-in in a board is it should be treated like a product. And a product, like as we know, I see a bazillion products on my desk right now. The color that went into this pen, the logo on it, the size of it, the thickness of the pen top, the name of it, the price point of it. There were so many things that went into it, and you need like buy-in and support for that, and ideally a budget for marketing for the program and buy-in from the different teams that are going to help talk about it all the time.
Welcome, everyone. I am so excited to be here with my friend, Dana Snyder, and she is the monthly giving queen. And so we're going to be talking all about monthly giving today in particular. But Dana, you want to start us off with just a little background into you and your work and what brings you to our conversation?
Yes. So I love anytime that I get to chat with Mallory. So I have been working in the nonprofit sector nearly my whole career, with some little like roller coaster moments that I call them in the middle, where I did some jumps to New York City and Los Angeles and worked in the agency world and on American Idol. But I started working in a nonprofit as a director of marketing and development, a small shop of 4 in Sarasota, Florida. And then 7 years ago, I launched my business, and that's how Mallory and I met a few years ago, but that's how we met when I was already in this work of being an entrepreneur, serving this space, and particularly focused on helping organizations build and scale monthly giving programs. And on the digital marketing side, really focus on helping nonprofits learn how to use social media advertising, specifically for lead generation. So growing your audience and finding new people to bring into your mission and your work. So I teach, we're going to talk about this now. We are both authors, which is wild, and have a podcast as well, Missions to Movements.
Yeah, we just like to parallel our businesses next to each other, and lives in many ways. And so that is actually just so nice, because then we get to go through everything together,
right.
Which is pretty incredible.
Are you doing this? Is this happening to you?
Exactly. And we'll talk a little bit more about sort of the importance of having partners and accountability partners and friends like that later when we talk about monthly giving. But so in the book and in your work, you talk about this 5-step framework around building a monthly giving program. And before you walk organizations through that, there are these 2 primary pillars that you talk about organizations needing to focus on and prioritize before they even start that process. And I know there's a lot of content out there and people just need to go and buy the book for the process. I want to talk about the pre-work, because I want to talk about what it looks like to set ourselves up for success as we walk into the strategy work itself.
Oh, it's so important. And I thank you for highlighting this aspect, because I don't think it's really talked about enough, right? The tech side of things, the scaling it, the marketing side, that is public, talked about a lot, but there is a lot of that pre-work. And so those foundational elements, I literally say you have to add a quote unquote another job title to your role, being a chief I can't say the word.
Evangelist.
Thank you. A chief evangelist of regular giving. Why could I not say that right then? Thank you for knowing what I'm trying to say.
Our brain is funny.
I was like, I can see the word. Why can't I say the word right now? So anyways, you have to be so all in building a monthly giving program to convince the team around you. I always say the 2 steps beforehand are convincing leadership and having that accountability partner or community for support. If you are that leader, I think it's being curious and being a part of the right programs that are going to give you that accountability to move forward. And if you are the leader, it's also then convincing your board for that support. So there's different nuances to it.
Okay. So let's start actually with foundational part 1 of sort of convincing leadership that recurring giving is important. We could have probably a year-long conversation about how to convince your boss or your board to take certain actions or sort of get inspired and motivated around different fundraising efforts. But instead of going too deep down there, I think it might be helpful to sort of bust for everybody some of the myths that typically come up when people are trying to navigate this with their board, because my guess is there are sort of some consistent stories, limiting beliefs, et cetera, that nonprofits are hearing. And so I would love to just have you like tell us what those are and then bust them so that the folks listening have the language to talk to their board about it.
Yes, absolutely. So I would say the first one is, if we create a monthly giving program and if we're going out with that ask, does that mean we are going to lose one-time supporters and we're going to lose major donors? They're not going to make that big gift. Both of those, one is kind of true and then one is false. So on one, will you lose maybe more one-time donations? Yes, possibly, but great. That's great news. If they're converting to a recurring donation, that's amazing, because I would say 99.9% of the time, that recurring gift might be a lower amount, but over the course of a year is going to far surpass what that one-time gift was, and they're going to continue for years to come. I think the average from the Neon One recurring giving report that came out this year was the average donor, recurring donor, stays with you for 7 to 8 years. I know I'm on year 4 for an organization that I give to. And I know that I would have probably given a $50 one-time gift. I give $25 a month over 4 years. Like, the impact of that is a big difference. So if you see one-time gifts go down, amazing. If you see recurring gifts go up. On the second part of that answer, it is recurring giving programs are an amazing opportunity for major donors in 2 ways. In my book, I talked with Cubby Graham at Charity Water, and he says that the spring, their monthly giving program, is actually an amazing funnel for them to find new major donors. So they look and they see, is somebody giving $250, $500 a month? Let's reach out to them and have another conversation about the work that we're doing and how they can maybe help us in some other areas. So you're able to identify people who might be able to support you in larger ways. 2, if you have somebody who you're in a conversation and you're asking for a $10,000, $25,000 gift, maybe even $5,000, and they say, no, I can't make that happen at this time. But if you have a monthly giving program, you could say, what if we split that gift into 12 amounts? Is that more doable for you? Or split, however you want to do it. It could be monthly, it could be quarterly. And they might say, you know what? That's way more feasible for me in my current financial situation. So there's that option. Then actually the third tier of it is an organization I'm working with right now, my mastermind, where in their monthly donor program, they've had 2 people that gave pretty like traditional like monthly giving amounts, nothing that seemed out of the ordinary. They gave them huge endowments on their passing, which they never expected. And so they're realizing, oh my gosh, because they've been giving for 5+, 6+ years, they're so invested in our mission, they're now leaving their money to them when they pass. And like, huge, huge, huge opportunity. And so when you think about a couple of these in the moment, I think jerk responses to, but we need the money now. And a recurring giving program gives you security and sustainability over time, right? Unless you have a program that is going to have like your 50,000 monthly donors a month, that's going to give you pouring of money all the time, it might not give you that immediate jerk of huge dollars right now, but I think that's not the point. Like, the point is that you want to have long-term sustainable funding that you can count on.
Ooh, okay. So I just want to there was so much in there that was valuable. I want to double click on something you actually said kind of at the beginning of that explanation around like, what if we lose one-time donors? There's so many limiting beliefs in our sector that like, if we just take a second glance at, we're like, oh, wait, that's a great problem to have.
Right.
Like, there's so many fears that we hold around things. And then I've been on so many coaching calls with folks when they're like, but what if blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, that's an amazing problem. Like, like that's my favorite problem, you know? And so I think it's just such a good reminder of like, no matter what's coming up on with your board or like what sort of resistance or miss they're throwing out, like taking that beat to be like, wait, is that really our problem? Or like, what does that actually indicate around what we're building here? I think a lot of times we like
an opportunity.
Totally. Right. But like a lot of times we want to like add the thing without it changing anything else in any way. And like, we're talking about transformation here, right? Like the caterpillar doesn't get to like keep all of its things to become, and then also become a butterfly, because it wouldn't be able to fly that way, right? Its body would be way too heavy. So it's like you have to recognize that a part of transformation is letting some things go in order to move towards this thing that you want. And so I love that. And I think there's this other undertone in what I'm hearing, which is like helping your board or your boss or whoever it is really vision and envision what it will look like and what is possible. And there's a lot of science around like the way in which strong visualizations actually simulate us experiencing them. And we can't actually tell the difference. Like our bodies can't really tell the difference between a really strong visualization of something and reality. And so when we're experiencing a lot of fear, like I do this a lot around funder meetings, like I have in Power Partners a recorded like walkthrough of a funder meeting for the fundraiser to visualize before they walk into that meeting, because then their body actually feels like it just experienced that funder meeting and they walk in feeling really fundamentally different. And there's a lot that folks can do as they're onboarding board members around helping them close their eyes and envision or walk them through, not here's what Charity Water did or here's what so-and-so did, but here's what it looks like for us. This is what it looks like for us in 6 months, 12 months, 18 months.
It's so good. So the book, I share like what I have done, but then I also over the past year have interviewed 15 different nonprofits of all different sizes, of all different causes to understand. And under each like step, I share some case studies and they are all so different, so vastly different, which proves literally what you're saying. It's going to look different for everyone, but there are lessons out there that exist. And that's why I wanted to share, like, there are so many different opportunities for you to interpret and to make the program your own and to test things out and see what works for you. And there's also some like tried and true things, but looking at peers and seeing what's working for them. And something else that you said, and this is going to be coming out right after the Monthly Giving Summit. Rich Fleming is one of our keynote speakers, and he is the head of subscriptions at Canva. So he manages, I think is it 20? They have 20 million annual and monthly subscribers to Canva. Shout out to Canva because it's an awesome tool. However, before managing, I think he says he manages like 60 people now that oversee subscriptions. He worked in the nonprofit space for like 15 years building monthly giving programs at I think 3 or 4 different organizations. And he says it all starts with, which we were just talking about, the vision. What is the vision of the monthly giving program? And they do what he teaches and like walks through during his keynote is their visioning process at Canva for every single product update and then how to present that vision and the different components of it in a way that rally the support of the internal teams. And the end of it, like they say at Canva, is always about the delight of the user. Beyond the utility of the tool, are we delighting? And so there's such parallels with that, with monthly giving. Have you even thought about, like on the foundational side, setting a vision for what you want this community to do? And so that's a little bit of like stepping into step 1, which is about the why and the structure for your program. But before that, it's like the big picture of like, what's the vision and how are you rallying your team to help get you there? And so another reason for having importance of leadership buy-in in a board is it should be treated like a product. And a product, like as we know, I see a bazillion products on my desk right now. The color that went into this pen, the logo on it, the size of it, the thickness of the pen top, the name of it, the price point of it. There were so many things that went into it, and you need like buy-in and support for that, and ideally a budget for marketing for the program and buy-in from the different teams that are going to help talk about it all the time. So it takes like a full team effort to make it possible.
Yeah. Okay. I love that. And I'm thinking a lot about like the science of motivation as we talk and what it takes to increase motivation on an individual and a collective level to get us over kind of the action line on a decision making, like on it making a decision. And then what happens, like I talk about this a lot when I keynote, sort of the different parts of our brain that are online for decision making versus the parts of our brain that come online when we go to implement that decision. And one of the biggest differences can be, although it sounds like a lot of fear comes up in the decision-making process for monthly giving too, but oftentimes I think we think that once we made the decision, the fear is going to go away. And what we don't realize is that actually when we move into implementation, there are other activities that activate our nervous system, create discomfort and then resistance. We start to second guess some of the decisions we made earlier on, or we start to like try to get out of pieces, right? We're like, okay, maybe like, yes, we're doing monthly giving, but like, oh, if we just didn't do this full thing, then maybe we'd also be able to retain that thing I said before about like the caterpillar and the butterfly, right? Like maybe like we don't, or maybe we could just like not do this work around a custom landing page or around a custom landing page or its own funnel or whatever, because that's a lot more work. And we could just like kind of squeeze these two things together. And to your point about like really needing to be all in, it's like you really need to be all in with the decision. And then you need to be prepared that being all in for the decision does not mean you're not going to experience resistance throughout the implementation of that program. And when you hit, so let's talk about that. Like, what does it look like to maintain motivation in recurring giving when it's activating our uncertainty and fear and anxiety, doubt? Like, how do we do that?
I think there has to be like micro goals. So a lot of the times we set out to say, I want 1,000 monthly donors. That's great. Let's start with 25, right? If you're starting from scratch. And I always like to try and use data. And so like anytime working with somebody, I'll say, well, let's look at your one time, how many people have given one time in the past 2 years, right? Let's look at some like real numbers and let's figure out what are our baby steps? What events do you have coming up in the next year? What type of thought leadership do you have? What is your current board structure like? Like what are the low hanging fruit? Just like 25. Let's get to 25. Okay, great. We got 25. Then let's go here. Because what that hopefully does at each of those, you're creating little milestones. And at each of those milestones should be cause for celebration for yourself. And we definitely don't do enough of that. I mean, I'm really bad at doing that too. I mean, just kind of like go on to the next thing. And this was a beautiful example of this is I had a mastermind client about a year ago who we have reunion calls every quarter. And she came on and at first she wasn't like feeling really good about the growth she had. And then she went and looked at, I think her original, I think she maybe had like 4 or 5 monthly donors when we started. And then she went in during the call and looked at her dashboard and saw that she had over $5,000 a month in recurring gifts and was like, whoa, like didn't take the time to like be like, oh my gosh, that was way more than I had said I was going to. It was just like, take the time to like know those numbers, create those small milestones that gets you over those, I think, hurdles when it can feel like you're at a plateau, which can happen sometimes. And then making sure that you're giving those like small milestones to celebrate and having the accountability, right? I think that's huge. Like this is the reason I created the Sustainer Slack channel. It's a group on Slack of nonprofits. There's about 60 or so organizations in there right now. And we're all in there. They're all trying to grow their monthly giving programs. And we provide peer-to-peer support. And somebody the other day was like, I got one more. And everyone's like, yeah, like putting the little balloons up and everything. And it's like to celebrate each other and how good that feels. And if you're a one-person team, that can be really hard to get sometimes because you're just sitting in your own world. So I was hoping that was the reason for this community is for people to find people like themselves to be able to connect and celebrate each other.
I love that. And there's this piece in there, which is also that like Lynn Twist, who wrote the book, The Soul of Money, has this quote in The Soul of Money that has just been like a little bit of a mantra for me for the last however many 15, 20 years since I first read it, which is what you appreciate appreciates. And I think it's so easy to like set it and forget it sometimes with some of these like things that we expect to be these like automated fundraising funnels or whatever it is we think we've set up, right? And like it's true, it's a big lift at the beginning. That's why you have the mastermind, right? To like really get folks set up correctly and have community and have motivation and support and all of those things, because it is. But then at the end of that, like how do you keep focus on it? How do you keep
It's work all
noticing
the
when a new
time.
person joins, right? And all of those things. And so I love that about the Slack channel. I love that about the story around someone celebrating one, because what that tells me is that you made them feel like one more person matters.
Matters.
You
Totally.
matters, right? And like, that's what we
Yeah.
want.
Oh my gosh. If anybody has watched, my mom watched it recently, and so I need to, but I was reading everything about it in the trailer of, I think it's called One Life. It's on Netflix. It's a film with Anthony Hopkins. It's the true story of the gentleman who saved 125 Jewish children during the Holocaust. He was cut at a certain amount. I haven't watched it yet, so I don't know. But the documentary, not to like spoil it, but the documentary part, he walks in for what he thinks he's like watching a show. He doesn't know, but the entire audience of the show are the children and the children of the children he saved. And the show starts with them talking about, one's a doctor, like all the work, it's going to make me emotional, all the work and beautiful things that they've done. And he saved them. And like that one doctor could save a life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Woo.
Yeah.
I don't know why it got me so emotional, but it is like, I think we forget one counts.
Yes. And I love the way that how you help people build their monthly giving, recognizing that it's about sustainability, that it's about scale, that it's about all these other things, but it's about doing it in a way that is connected and meaningful and going deeper and all of those things. Because to your point, like that one person who's learning more about your organization on a monthly basis and feels a part of your monthly giving program and forms more of their identity around being a part of that, is going to make different life decisions, is going to contribute to society in different ways. And that's why, like, I always say, like, good fundraising, like, is the work. It's not like our work is over here and then the fundraising is the necessary evil to power the work or this means to an end.
Yeah.
It's like when you do fundraising right, like it is the work. And I think everything you talk about related to how you teach folks to do monthly giving is like just so aligned with that.
Thanks. I mean, I hope the genesis and what I hope comes out of the book and how I hope to teach is that it's as much tactical as cheerleading, like rooting for you along the sides and being like a champion for you, and also giving you like the nitty gritty 1, 2, 3, 4, right? You need both of those. It can't just be all practical work all the time. You need that. You got this. Go get it. Here's an example. Talk to this person. They've done this, right? And I hope when people read it, they're like, oh, I can totally hear her in this. And I remember I've gotten like a sneak, and yours feels that way too. And because I think we're human, right? And at the end of the day, it is those relationships that count. I love how beautifully you said that, like the life decisions are going to change just because they've become a monthly donor of your organization. So good.
Yeah. Okay. I know we have to go in like 2 minutes, but I do think it's an opportunity, because you just wrote your first book. I just wrote my first book. We're talking about fear and discomfort. We're talking about it maybe in areas of our life, like monthly giving or fundraising or whatever, where we have new tools to have more confidence in those things than perhaps the average person listening. However, we just did our super uncertain, scary new thing. So I don't know if you want to like drop any, we don't have time to get sort of into the nitty gritty of like book writing, but like, any learning that came out of it for you about growth and discomfort. And you shared a lot about your intentions around what people get from the book, but any other things you want to share about having just come into a new butterfly stage? What any takeaways that folks can learn about?
Yeah, I think it was the main part of it. The steps that I've been teaching came actually so naturally to write. And I think you, listener, have a story I bet you can tell. And I bet you have a book in you, or maybe you've thought about writing a book. There's this crazy stat that 81% of people in the world have thought about writing a book, but only 1% have. And I think literally what we just talked about, all the fear stops us. The fear of thinking about 50,000 words, the fear of what is somebody going to think about, the judgment, because it's print. Like you and I have talked about this. We can't go back online and just quickly edit out a sentence. I think it'll come to you easier than you think if you just give yourself the space to write. Maybe that starts with like journal entries, but I think nonprofits have such an ability to make an impact with being writers and writing books about their mission. Just like tied to this thought up, my publisher, I just did a podcast episode with her, and she said her first job was working at a nonprofit because she read a book. She read a book about the anti-slavery movement, and the book made her get into the nonprofit sector. And I think there's no greater way for someone to get to know you than reading 200, 300 pages about you, right? That doesn't come across on a keynote. It doesn't come across on a podcast. But somebody who's like flipping physical pages and getting to know you in that way, there's no replacement for that.
Oh my gosh. Dana, thank you so much for this conversation, for all the wisdom. Where do you want people to go? There's so many things. So tell folks where they can go to get the next bit from this conversation.
So just go to positiveequation.com/book. You can find out all the details there. And I do have something pretty fun. During this like pre-sale launch-ish phase, I am raffling off, if you put in your order number from Amazon or Barnes & Noble, wherever, onto the website, you'll be entered into the raffle, and someone's going to win a spot in my mini mastermind, which is 3 months, totally free. There's 2 calls a month of group coaching. You'll get social media templates every single month. It's worth $750. And so I'd love to hopefully work with you.
Amazing. Oh my God, that's so generous. You're the best. It's so good to see you. And I cannot wait for all that's to come for you, for folks who are looking to create or deepen their monthly giving programs. So thank you so, so much.